Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm excited to bring you another powerful AMBW drama filled with corporate betrayal, slow burn romance, and one woman who turned a billionaire's world upside down. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It truly helps this channel grow and lets me bring you even more epic love stories. Now, let's begin. The sound of heels striking marble echoed through the sleek, glass-lined halls of Moore Impact Strategies, cutting clean and sharp as the woman who wore them. Alvera Moore didn't rush. She didn't panic. She walked like the floor itself reported to her. Her skin glowed under the soft office lighting, and her natural curls were pulled into a high, regal puff, crowned, not styled. Dressed in tailored black suit, gold accents on her wrist and ears, Alvera exuded the kind of quiet command that silenced rooms before she spoke. And right now, she was walking toward war. Alvera! Her assistant Jamie jogged beside her. It's confirmed. CO Holdings has been buying shares through third-party LLCs for weeks. They've got a 17% hold on our public float. Alvera didn't slow. And the remaining 83? Still fragmented among smaller investors, hedge funds, pension groups, but if Hyunwoo Seo aligns them, he could push for control. Alvera stopped at her glass office door. He's betting I'll blink. Jamie blinked instead. Are you not blinking? Alvera turned her head slowly, eyes burning with calm fire. I'm loading the gun. Inside her office, the screens were already alive. Market graphs, internal reports, and a glowing red headline at the bottom of one monitor. SEEO Holdings expected to acquire stake in Moore Impact Strategies. A smile, slow and devastating, spread across her lips. Patch me through to Cynthia at the Financial Pulse. I want to leak something. Sharp. Seoul, South Korea. 14 hours later, Hyunwoo Seo stared at his phone screen, unreadable behind his steel-rimmed glasses. A brutal chill filled the boardroom. Sir, the stock dropped 13% overnight, his CFO murmured. U.S. media's running wild with insider accusations. And someone leaked the acquisition trail. It traces back to us. Hyunwoo didn't respond. He simply sat there, elegant in a charcoal gray suit, sharp jaw set, eyes calculating. She exposed us before we even made an offer, the legal director said quietly. She anticipated everything. His voice was cold and smooth when it finally came. No, not anticipated. He tapped the screen and zoomed in on the image attached to the article. A photo of Alvera Moore walking out of her Manhattan headquarters in a power coat and sunglasses, one hand in her pocket, one hand on her phone. Moore versus Seo, the marketing queen who crushed a titan. Hyunwoo's jaw twitched once. She engineered this. The room fell silent. He stood. Get me her direct line. Back in New York, midnight. Alvera sat on her penthouse balcony, legs curled beneath her as city lights glittered below. A wine glass rested untouched beside her laptop. The skyline didn't faze her. She'd built her own. Her phone buzzed, unknown international number. She smiled. She picked up and said nothing. Alvera Moore. A low, accented voice came through the line, smooth and surgical, like a scalpel dipped in silk. I see you enjoy starting wars you can't win. Alvera leaned back in her chair. Hyunwoo Seo. I was wondering when you'd crawl out from behind your proxies. A pause, just enough to taste the tension. You cost me $6 billion in one day. And you cost me peace and quiet, she replied casually. So I suppose we're even. He chuckled. Quiet. Deadly. Come to Seoul. Let's discuss how you plan to survive the next strike. Alvera swirled her wine and smirked. Mr. CEO. I'm not coming to survive. I'm coming to conquer. Incheon International Airport, Seoul, South Korea. The plane doors opened to overcast skies and a tense, damp wind. But Alvera Moore didn't flinch. She stepped off the private jet in a structured white coat that brushed just below her knees, heels clicking softly on the jet bridge. Her hair, freshly coiled and pinned back, framed a face that wore no makeup, only poise. There were no assistants holding signs, no floral garlands or polite airport staff. Instead, waiting at the bottom of the steps were 3 black SUVs and 4 men in charcoal suits. One stood out, tall, broad-shouldered, and stony-faced. "Miss Moore," he said with a nod that barely registered as respectful. "I'm Mr. Nam, Chief Security Officer to Mr. Hyunwoo SEO. I'll be escorting you." Alvera raised an eyebrow. No flowers, no answer, just an open door. She smirked and slid in. CO Holdings Boardroom, Gangnam District. The room was a minimalist monument to power. Glass, slate, and black stone. At the center, a long obsidian table surrounded by chairs that whispered old money and newer ambition. Hyunwoo Seo stood at the head, dressed like command itself, black tailored suit, double-breasted with silver cufflinks. His hair was swept neatly back, his expression cool and unreadable. Alvera entered with a slow, calculated walk, unbothered by the lingering glances from Korean board members who clearly weren't used to women like her, let alone Black, American, and unapologetically assertive. "Welcome to Seoul," Hyunwoo said without smiling. "I trust your flight was comfortable." "It was efficient," Alvera replied, pulling off her coat and draping it over her arm. Her blouse was cream silk, and her presence muted the room more effectively than any title. He gestured toward the seat beside him. She sat at the other end. A flicker of irritation danced behind his eyes. "Shall we discuss a ceasefire?" he asked. She crossed one leg over the other. "Ceasefires imply we were both shooting. You were plotting. I was correcting." Soft coughs echoed from the board. Some of them were watching her with narrowed eyes, others with amusement. Hyunwoo's mouth curved ever so slightly. "I propose a joint campaign. Shared markets, shared influence. You maintain your brand's autonomy, but under our umbrella." She scanned the table. "So, I keep my crown, but bow to your throne?" A few board members stirred. Hyunwoo leaned forward slightly, voice cool. "You misunderstand. It would be mutually beneficial." Alvera tapped her fingers against the table once, then again, then silence. "Here's what I propose instead," she said calmly. "You divest your stake in my company publicly within 10 days. Issue a statement acknowledging your overreach. And then we launch a new market venture, with me as lead and you as backer. Silent backer." His brows lifted. "You want me silent?" "I find noise counterproductive, especially when it's mostly ego." The air shifted. Sharp intake of breath from the finance director, a clench from the man beside her, but not Hyunwoo. He just stared at her like she was a puzzle he hadn't been able to solve yet, and hated that it intrigued him. She stood, slow and deliberate. "I believe we're done here." Hyunwoo rose as well, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. His voice dropped low. Korean words murmured under his breath as she walked past, but his aide caught it, barely. "If she won't bow in the boardroom, okay, I'll make her bow elsewhere." Gangnam, Seoul, the Seo Foundation Gala. The ballroom glittered. It was the kind of old money affair where the chandeliers were antique. The wine was poured from bottles older than the guests, and secrets were traded faster than stocks. Every detail whispered legacy, power, control. which was exactly why Hyunwoo Seo had invited her. Alvera Moore stood at the top of the marble steps, watching the sea of tailored tuxedos and silk gowns swirl below. She wore black tonight, off-shoulder velvet that framed her skin like midnight over honey. Her curls fell loose in soft waves, the only untamed thing in the room. From across the crowd, Hyunwoo appeared. He was already watching her, not as prey, not as competition, something else. His suit was deep navy, custom fit, no tie, understated but unmistakable. He moved through the crowd like the room belonged to him, and for years it had. But now, she was here. He offered a hand when he reached her. "Miss Moore, you look unbuyable," she offered with a slow smile, ignoring his hand. He chuckled quietly, then leaned in just enough for her to feel the warning in his voice. "Try to enjoy yourself tonight. We're among friends. Friends don't sabotage your shipping contracts and freeze your credit lines," she replied, descending the stairs alone. "But I'll keep smiling." Midway through the gala, the whispers started soft, then sharp, then everywhere. She flew in from the States just for him. They say she's not just a CEO. Kept woman, bold though. Did you see where she's seated? Right next to Hyunwoo? Alvera knew how to read a room, and this one had been scripted against her. A click of a camera flash, then 2, then 5. A cluster of media personalities gathered near the champagne fountain, watching her movements. And then it dropped. The headline flashed on a handheld tablet held accidentally in view. SEO's secret lover? Black American CEO stirs scandal in Seoul. She didn't blink. She rose from the dining table without a word, walked toward the stage where the MC had just thanked a violinist, and reached for the mic. Gasps. The host froze. Hyunwoo looked up from his table, eyebrows low. This was not part of the plan. Alvera adjusted the mic with 2 fingers. Calm, regal. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her American accent slicing clearly through the soft classical music. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but since I seem to be trending in your circles, I thought I'd clarify a few things." Murmurs, cameras raised. "If Mr. SEO wanted me as his mistress?" A pause. Then she smiled, slow, savage, and stunning. "He'd have to survive me first." The room exploded in gasps, laughter, and disbelief. A few clapped. A few were horrified. One woman in a red gown nearly choked on her drink. But Alvera? She handed the mic back to the stunned MC and walked off stage like a queen returning to her throne. Later, that night, Seo Holdings HQ, private office. Hyunwoo poured himself a drink slowly, the ice cracking inside the glass. His jacket was off, his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows. Jungmin, his loyal aide, watched him with raised brows. She flipped the entire narrative with one sentence. "She embarrassed you," Jungmin added carefully. Hyunwoo didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, just sipped the drink, eyes thoughtful. Then he smirked. A sharp, quiet smile that came not from anger, but something more dangerous. Admiration, obsession, challenge. He set the glass down. "Good," he murmured. Jungmin tilted his head. "Good." Hyunwoo's gaze never left the window overlooking Seoul's skyline. Now it's war. 2 weeks later, Seoul Gangnam District. The city hadn't seen this kind of shakeup since Hyunwoo Seo first rose to power. His clients were defecting, not publicly, not dramatically, but quietly, cleanly. One after another, they signed with More Impact Seoul. The new branch Alvera had opened out of nowhere, backed by a coalition of progressive investors, small firms hungry for innovation, and a press release so sharp it nearly cut through his headquarters. Marketing is no longer about dominance, it's about trust. Alvera Moore. Seoul press event. She didn't name him. She didn't have to. Her campaign rollout, future-facing, people first, used clean lines, localized storytelling, and a cross-cultural design philosophy that won hearts. Hyunwoo's empire had always been built on control. Alvera's, on connection, and Seoul was listening. CO Holdings' private war room. What do you mean they pulled out? Hyunwoo's voice was low, lethal. Jungmin adjusted his tie nervously. Artech, Yunsoft, and the education contracts in Incheon, all gone, signed with Moore. Hyunwoo's jaw flexed. Do we know how she funded her launch? We're tracing the paper trail. Looks clean so far, but what? Jungmin hesitated. She's becoming liked. That word stung worse than betrayal. Hyunwoo turned toward the frosted glass, his reflection fractured in the light. Liked. He didn't care for liked. He understood feared. He respected respected. But liked? It was a weapon she wielded far too well. Buy out her supply chain, he said finally. All of it. Whoever feeds her materials, her software, her workspace, lock it down. But that would be... Do it! 2 days later, Ida District. Alvera slammed the door of her office, still in heels, phone pressed to her ear. Her team was panicking. 3 shipments delayed, 2 frozen at customs, and 1 mysteriously rerouted. Every supplier she used was now suddenly under new management. She didn't need a report to know whose hand was behind it. Hyunwoo Seo had played his move, and she was done playing nice. SEO private office, 1:13 a.m. Let her in, Hyunwoo said without looking up from his glass. But sir, she's here to yell. I'd rather she do it to my face. The door opened, and she walked in with the force of a storm. Her black pencil skirt was creased from hours of standing, her blouse slightly untucked, but her eyes, oh, her eyes, were fire. You think this is a game? She snapped. He set his glass down. Everything's a game. You've frozen half my operations. You're intercepting my shipments, playing puppet with customs. You stole my clients. I earned your clients. Silence, a dangerous kind. He stood slowly, walking around the desk with deliberate calm. I underestimated you, he said, voice low. Once. Alvera stepped forward, shoulders squared. Then don't make the mistake of confusing sabotage with strategy. You're not impressing anyone. You're cornering yourself. I'm cornering you. No, she said. You're showing me who you become when you're afraid of losing. That made him stop. He stared at her, not the way a rival stares, not the way a CEO stares, but the way a man stares at a woman who just exposed something he spent a lifetime hiding. You want me to admit you're good? He asked, voice softer now. I don't need your praise, she replied, just your absence. He took a step closer. So did she. Unfortunately, he murmured, I find you difficult to ignore. Good, she said. That means I'm doing my job. Another step. Closer. Their bodies didn't touch, but the tension felt like static. Heavy in the air. Impossible to dismiss. You fight me like a man, he whispered, voice barely audible. Her heart skipped. He leaned closer, eyes never leaving hers. But you tempt me like a woman. Silence. Alvera's breath hitched. Just slightly. But she didn't move. Didn't step back. Didn't blink. Instead, she tilted her head and murmured, Then maybe you should stop underestimating how dangerous that combination can be. He smiled, slow, dark, intrigued. They stood inches apart in the dim office, shadows carving across their faces like battle lines. Neither kissed, neither retreated, but everything changed. Something between them cracked open, and neither would be able to close it again. SEO Holdings, executive floor. Alvera sat still as the new contract landed on the glass table in front of her. The room was empty, except for Hyunwoo and his aide, who quietly excused himself and closed the doors behind him. She flipped through the document, scanning with sharp eyes and steady fingers. Everything in the language was balanced: co-lead, joint funding, shared markets. Equal partners, Hyunwoo said, his voice smooth like ink drying on silk. She didn't look up. "I didn't ask for a partnership," she said. "I came here to dismantle your monopoly." He walked around the table, slow, deliberate, and yet, here you are, reading the terms line by line instead of burning them. Alvera paused, touché. "I know what this is," she said finally, setting the contract down. "It's not a peace offering. It's proximity. You think the closer you pull me in, the more control you'll have." He gave the faintest smile. Control is temporary, but influence? That made her look up, and for a moment she saw something else in his gaze. Less hunger, more curiosity. Less power play, more gravity. "I don't need to control you, Alvera," he said softly. "I need to work with someone who can actually beat me. You've done that, more than once." Silence stretched between them. Her pride stood tall, but beneath it, something shifted. She reached for the pen. "I'll play your game," she said, signing the bottom line. "But if this is a trap, it's not." She raised an eyebrow. That's what every villain says. Days later, the boardroom. The first joint meeting was electric, not because of the numbers or the charts projected onto the walls, but because of the way they stood on opposite ends of the table, challenging each other in perfect rhythm. "Your campaign concept is too soft," Hyunwoo said, arms folded. "Koreans want impact, not sentiment." "You mean your clients want familiarity," Alvera shot back. "That's not the same as loyalty." He leaned forward. "You're assuming I don't understand emotional currency. I'm assuming you've never had to earn it." A few stunned aides looked between them as the tension snapped again, but neither was angry. Not really. The fire between them was something else entirely. By the third meeting, their debates had turned flirtatious in undertone, even if neither acknowledged it. She wore colors now: dark green, cobalt blue. He noticed. He no longer buttoned the top of his shirt. She noticed. And though nothing was said out loud, everything was being said in silence. One evening, CO Holdings Rooftop. It was nearly 10 p.m. The building was emptying. The city lights below flickered like galaxies. Alvera had just come from a planning session. Her heels clicked softly against the rooftop tiles as she stepped out into the breeze. Hyunwoo was already there, back to her, jacket off, sleeves rolled. "I didn't realize the skyline came with a brooding CEO," she said lightly. "I didn't realize you'd stay this late," he answered without turning. "Thought you were avoiding me." "I'm negotiating with you. There's a difference." He finally faced her, face unreadable in the dim light. "You've changed the way my staff looks at me." "Good. You've changed the way I look at things." She folded her arms. "You want gratitude?" "No," he said, stepping toward her. "I want honesty." The space between them shrank. He stood close now. Too close for corporate etiquette. Not close enough for confession. "Tell me something real, Alvera," he said. "Something not in a press release." She hesitated, then quietly, "I never meant to come here and like this place. I never meant to like you." The last word surprised them both. He inhaled sharply. "Then don't," I'm trying not to. Try harder. I am. The wind moved her curls gently across her shoulder. His hand lifted, paused just inches away, but didn't touch. I should go, she said. Then go. But she didn't. Neither of them moved. Their eyes locked, charged, magnetic, frustrated. Then, slowly, Hyunwoo leaned in. His breath was warm against her cheek, but his lips didn't touch her. Just hovered, tempted. Alvera didn't pull away. She looked up at him, breathing shallow. You keep pulling away like you don't want this, he murmured, but you haven't moved. A long pause. Silence wrapped around them like velvet. Then, the rooftop door creaked open. Young-min stepped halfway through. Sir, he froze. I didn't realize. Alvera stepped back, slow and calm. The spell broke, but her heart thundered. Hyunwoo's jaw was tight. He didn't look away from her as he said, We're done for tonight. She turned and walked toward the stairs, heels echoing like punctuation marks on something unfinished. Hyunwoo remained on the rooftop long after she left. He looked down at the city he once ruled without question and wondered, for the first time, if he was ready to lose it, just to win her. Morning. Seoul headlines. Break. Alvera barely had time to sip her coffee before the first message arrived. Subject, urgent. Damage control needed now. PR team, more impact Seoul. She clicked it open. There it was. The headline. The lie twisted from a half-truth. American fraud in Seoul. Alvera Moore's U.S. lawsuit resurfaces amid joint venture with CEO Holdings. Her chest tightened. Below the headline were snippets from an old civil case, a lawsuit from her early days in business, filed by a former mentor turned competitor. It had long been settled out of court, the record sealed, but someone had unsealed enough to spin a narrative. Misrepresentation, false promises to early investors. Ethics questioned, none of it new, all of it poisonous, and too perfectly timed. Later, that day, CEO Holdings, 51st floor. Hyunwoo stood in his office, staring at the printed files on his desk. His legal team had gathered them for him. Gleefully, this was the golden ticket. The documents clearly showed the original lawsuit had been based on fabricated claims. He could confirm it, publicly, with one press release, or he could stay silent and let her fall. His thumb brushed the edge of the paper, brow furrowed. This was the moment he should have waited for. She was vulnerable, distracted, wounded. One strike would guarantee her withdrawal from their joint venture and her return to the U.S. in disgrace. One strike, and he could reclaim the empire she'd stolen piece by piece. He turned toward the window. The city lights were cold, distant. And yet, somewhere in the silence, he remembered the rooftop, the wind in her hair, the honesty in her voice. I never meant to like you. He closed his eyes. Winning had never felt hollow before, but this would echo. An hour later, Alvera's hotel suite. There was no note, just a small folder slipped under her door. Her name was written in fine calligraphy on the front. No signature, no stamp. Inside, a complete set of documents, evidence, timestamps, testimonies, and a USB drive. She sat in silence for several minutes, holding it. Then she stood. SEO Holdings, at 2:26 a.m. He didn't expect her to come. Not this late. Not like this. But Alvera Moore stormed into his office like thunder wrapped in silk. Her coat hung off one shoulder, curls wild from wind and fury. She held the folder in one hand, like a weapon. "You knew," she said. Hyun-woo looked up from his desk slowly. "Yes. You could have released it. Let the story eat me alive. Ruin me in front of your board." "I could have. So why didn't you?" She slammed the folder down on his desk, hard enough to echo. Her voice cracked, not with weakness, but with emotion restrained too long. "Why didn't you destroy me when you had the chance?" Silence. Hyun-woo rose from his chair, calm, controlled, devastating. He stepped around the desk, stopping just short of her. His voice was quiet, but it sliced through the tension like a blade. "Because losing you," he said, "would feel worse than losing everything." Alvera's breath hitched. Her hand trembled on the folder, just slightly. She stared at him, this man who tried to undo her, only to protect her when the opportunity finally came. "You're not who I thought you were," she said softly. "Neither are you," he replied. They stood there, two enemies who had cracked open something they couldn't unsee. Not trust yet, but not war anymore either. As Alvera walked away from his office, the hallway lights dimming behind her, she didn't feel like she'd won or lost, just changed. Something between them had shifted. And for the first time since landing in Seoul, she didn't know what she wanted more, to defeat him, or to know what it would feel like to be his. Late evening, research archive, more impact Seoul office. It started with a question. A single question that wouldn't leave Alvera alone. Why didn't he destroy me? And so, like the strategist she was, she went looking for answers. She combed through archived interviews, legal filings, joint ventures, and buried beneath public headlines and old Korean press articles, a pattern emerged. Hyun-woo Seo's empire was full of corrections. Deals rewritten, lawsuits settled quietly, CEOs removed overnight and replaced by former whistleblowers. Whole sectors of the SEO business quietly dismantled without explanation. And then there was his father, Seo Min-jae. The founding chairman had left a trail of fraud, corruption, and scandal in his wake. But somehow the family legacy had survived, only because someone had cleaned it. Silently, systematically. Hyun-woo hadn't inherited an empire. He'd inherited a crime scene. And instead of exposing it, he'd buried the blood with gold. Why? Because if the truth had come out, everything would have burned. Hours later, Seo Holdings, 49th floor. Alvera didn't knock. She just walked in. Hyun-woo was alone, jacket off, collar unbuttoned, tie discarded across a leather chair. The city glowed behind him in full night bloom. Tall, distant, unreachable. He looked up when she entered, but didn't speak. She tossed the manila folder onto his desk. "Your father forged land deeds and used shell companies to fake foreign investments." Hyun-woo didn't move. "I traced 3 of the entities your company still pays royalties to. They're fake. You knew." "I know everything," he said quietly. She folded her arms. "Then why not expose it? Why carry it?" "Because the scandal wouldn't kill just his legacy," he said. "It would destroy thousands of jobs, collapse subsidiaries, bankrupt schools we fund, hospitals we keep open, and crush my sister." A pause. Alvera softened. "Your sister?" "She's still in university, studying social welfare. She thinks our family built something good. She doesn't know." He stopped himself. Then, "She doesn't know what I had to clean up, what I had to become, to protect what's left." Silence. Heavy, honest. "You never wanted to be the villain," Alvera whispered. "So why are you still playing the role?" He looked up, and in that moment, eyes hollow, voice bare, Hyun-woo Seo looked like a man who had fought every battle except the one inside himself. "Because someone had to," he said. Moments later, they stood across from each other. No war, no strategy, just raw truth. "You hate me a little less now?" he asked, a tired smile playing at his lips. "I don't know what I feel," Alvera admitted. "That's new for you." "It is?" He stepped closer, slowly. "You always know what you want," he said, voice softer now. "But I wonder." He stopped right in front of her. "What do you need, Alvera?" Her breath caught, and then, no more words. She kissed him first. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't neat. It was emotion and tension, teeth and tenderness, the crash of pride against longing. His hand found her waist. Hers found the back of his neck. And for a brief, blinding moment, there was no empire, no rivalry, just them, breathing, breaking, becoming something they hadn't planned. The next morning, Alvera's hotel suite. Sunlight spilled across the sheets. Alvera sat by the window, hair tousled, robe wrapped loosely around her. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't frowning. She was thinking. Everything had changed, and she didn't know if it was weakness or just finally letting go of the armor. A soft chime sounded. New message. Unknown sender. "He's playing you. Check the contract." She stared at the screen. Then again. Her fingers hovered, trembling slightly now, as she opened the attachment. Moore Impact Seoul. Legal Department. Alvera stared at the clause, her chest tight. It was buried in the appendices, cloaked in vague corporate language that no one without legal fluency would have caught. But she caught it now. Clause 49, B.3.1. Should SEO Holdings fulfill all market performance projections within 12 fiscal cycles, equity control may revert in majority to senior stakeholder for the purpose of sustained long-term brand alignment. Translation: if certain targets were hit, targets Hyunwoo's empire always hit. He'd take control of her company. Quietly, legally, and with her signature on the dotted line. The walls closed in as Alvera gripped the paper. She'd been outplayed, or worse, deceived. 2 hours later, CO Holdings, 51st floor. She didn't wait for permission, didn't call ahead. The doors to Hyunwoo's office flew open so hard they hit the walls behind them. He looked up from his desk, eyes narrowing. "Alvera!" "Don't." Her voice was low, controlled, dangerous. She tossed the contract across the desk, pages fanned like accusations. "Clause 49, B.3.1, she said coldly. "You gave yourself majority control of my company after 1 year." Hyunwoo stood slowly. "I didn't write that clause." "You proposed the deal." "I didn't draft the legal language." "You had your team bury it and waited for me to find out after." She stopped, throat tight. "After everything." He stepped around the desk. "Alvera, listen to me. That clause was inserted by my uncle, Chairman CEO. He's the one who's been trying to push you out from the beginning. He never wanted this partnership." She scoffed. "And you expect me to believe you now? I'm telling you the truth. You always tell the truth once you've taken something." That landed. Hyunwoo's jaw tensed. "I've given you more truth than I've ever given anyone. Then why does this still feel like a trap?" Silence. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because anything he said now, whether true or false, would feel strategic. Not honest, not real, not safe. Alvera took a step back. Her voice was quieter now, but broken. "You made me fall into something that wasn't even real." His brows furrowed. "I never asked you to fall." "That's the worst part," she whispered. The room. Fractures. "You really think I'd use you just to steal your company?" he asked, his voice rising. After everything I've shown you, everything I told you about my father, my sister, myself? I think, she said, eyes burning, that you've spent your entire life turning vulnerability into leverage. And now I don't know which part of you is real and which part is calculated. That silenced him, and maybe that was the real answer, because even he didn't know anymore. Alvera walked to the desk, picked up the contract, and slammed it down hard. Her eyes met his, hurt, strong, final. We're done. She turned and walked out. He didn't chase her, because he didn't know how. 48 hours later, breaking news in Seoul. The media storm broke over Seoul like a monsoon. Every screen, every news anchor, every headline. SEO Holdings, CEO under investigation for contractual fraud. Alvera Moore, scandal linked to insider collapse. Board takes action. Chairman intervenes. Alvera sat alone in her Seoul office as the reports rolled in. Her inbox flooded with PR statements, legal requests, and panicked investors. Her hands were steady, but her gut knew something was off, because none of this felt like a win, not the way it was supposed to. Meanwhile, CEO Holdings boardroom. Hyun-woo didn't say a word as the board convened. Chairman Seo, his uncle, sat at the head of the table, looking like a man who had just untangled a knot he'd spent years tying. The clause was unauthorized, one board member said. His romantic involvement with Ms. Moore creates bias, another added. Stock confidence has dropped since her exposure. And finally, it's time for transition. The room didn't burn. It bled. Hyun-woo stood, jaw set. He looked at his uncle, who gave a soft smile. Calculated, triumphant. You used her, Hyun-woo said. No, his uncle replied. You did. I merely cleaned the mess. None of this happened until she came into the picture. Exactly. The air froze. It was never about Alvera as a threat. She had been the tool, elegant, disarming, foreign, uncontrollable, everything the old guard feared, and everything they needed to exploit. They let Hyun-woo fall for her, let him build the partnership, let the media draw lines between them, romantic, professional, scandalous, and when the line snapped, they used the pieces to bury him. Later, that day, more impact Seoul. Alvera paced her hotel suite, legal folder open, papers scattered across the floor. Her lawyer's voice played through the speakerphone. And if CO Holdings breaches the JV agreement, your assets are exposed. They can tie you to the performance clause if they argue you withheld key information. I didn't, she snapped. But perception, Ms. Moore, is strategy. Her breath caught. It was all unraveling. And somewhere deep down, in a place she didn't want to admit existed, she whispered the words, this wasn't his plan. Hyun-woo hadn't played her. His uncle had. That evening, outside CO Holdings, a crowd had formed. Cameras, phones, news vans, reporters screaming questions. Mr. SEO, do you have anything to say about your removal? Did you use Ms. Moore to cover internal corruption? Is this the end of CO Holdings? The doors opened. Security parted the crowd, and Hyun-woo stepped through. No guards, no entourage, just him. He wore no tie. His coat was missing. He walked slowly, controlled, but with a heaviness in his shoulders the world had never seen before. The flashes popped. He didn't blink. He just walked away from the building he'd built, from the empire he'd protected, from the legacy that was never truly his, one step at a time, alone. A single photo splashed across the front page the next morning. The fall of the ice, CEO, Hyun-woo Seo walks away, alone, powerless, and disgraced. But somewhere, in a quiet hotel room across Seoul, a woman stared at that image and realized too late. She hadn't broken his empire. She'd walked straight into its trap. A week later, somewhere outside Seoul, Alvera stared at the mountains beyond the glass, her coffee cold in her hands. The hotel was remote, quiet. No paparazzi, no boardrooms, no contracts to sign. Just space, stillness, and the photo, the one from the paper. Hyun-woo, walking alone, the crowd parting around him like smoke. She traced the image with her thumb and whispered aloud, "He told me I was the only one he ever told the truth to." Now she saw it. She hadn't destroyed a man. She had delivered him into his uncle's hands. That afternoon, a small house. Near Gyeonggi Province, the door was plain, brown wood, unmarked. A young woman in her early 20s opened it, blinking in surprise. "Can I help you?" she asked in gentle Korean. Alvera bowed slightly. "I'm here to see Hyun-woo Seo." The girl hesitated. "He doesn't take visitors." "I'm not a visitor," Alvera replied softly. "I'm the reason he's here." Moments later, the door opened again, and this time it was him. Hyun-woo stood in faded black sweats and a soft gray hoodie, unshaven, barefoot, his hair tousled, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Not the kind that came from work, but the kind that came from disillusionment. He said nothing. Neither did she. Alvera stepped in, closed the door behind her, and when he still didn't speak, she filled the silence the only way she knew how. Honestly, "I didn't come to save you," she said. "I came to save myself." He blinked. That hurt. She saw it. But then she added, her voice steadier now, "But maybe we can save each other." Silence. Then, slowly, his voice rough from disuse, "You should hate me." "I did. And now? I hate what they did to you," she said. "And I hate that I helped them." His jaw tightened. "You believe the worst of me." "I believe the worst in everyone," she replied. "It's how I survived this long." Something flickered behind his eyes. Understanding. And something softer. She stepped closer. The room was bare, books on the floor, cold tea on the counter. "You were never the villain, Hyun-woo," she said gently. "You were just wearing the mask your family forced on you." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in days, his spine straightened. "I still have files," he said slowly. "Proof of my uncle's offshore accounts, embezzlement, illegal political donors. I was collecting them before the board turned, but now I need access, leverage." "Then we use my name," she said. He frowned. "What?" "My reputation is still intact, barely. I use it to get into the doors they've closed on you. We draw the board back in, expose the fraud from inside." "And after that?" Alvera's mouth curved into a slow, wicked smile. "We set fire to the whole thing." A beat passed, then another, and finally, he laughed. A short, broken, cathartic laugh that made something in her chest ache. He crossed the space between them, standing close enough now to feel the pull return. "You're insane," he whispered. "Maybe," she said, "but I'm also angry, and I don't like being used." His eyes flickered to her lips. "I should have told you about the clause. You should have fought harder to prove it wasn't you." They stood in silence. No kiss. Not yet. Just truth. Tension. Forgiveness. Not spoken, but felt. And then, Alvera stepped back, fire in her eyes. "You ready?" she asked. "For what?" "To break an empire." Hyun-woo looks at her, this woman who once burned him, now offering to burn with him. He nods once, and behind them, the sun dips low. But this time, they rise. 3 weeks later, Seoul Finance District. It started with a signature. Alvera's name, inked on a digital authorization document, gave them access to key financial audits buried deep within the Seoul Holdings intranet. A whisper from a former board member, one loyal to Hyun-woo's late mother, led them to a private server. Inside, a treasure chest of poison, fake contracts, ghost companies, massive transfers of funds to government officials and offshore accounts, all tied to Chairman SEO. Alvera and Hyun-woo sat side by side in her hotel suite that night, the screen glowing between them. "You've had this for how long?" she asked. "Over a year," he replied. "I was building a case, quietly." She looked at him. "Why not go public?" He exhaled, fingers locked. "Because I didn't have you." She didn't look away, didn't hide the shift in her eyes, because neither of them was pretending anymore. Not about the war, and not about them. Days later, shareholder summit, SEO Holdings. Alvera stood at the podium, her voice calm but lethal. "Chairman CEO has misused company funds for personal and political gain. The evidence is in your hands, and I suggest, before you cast your votes, you ask yourselves if this is the kind of legacy you want your name attached to." The room was silent. Then a ripple of murmurs. Then applause. Hyun-woo stepped beside her, his hand brushing the small of her back in subtle solidarity. No one spoke against them. Not that day. Later. That night, rain tapped gently against the windows as they stood inside. Hyun-woo unbuttoned his soaked shirt, revealing a long scar on his side, a remnant from a car accident years ago, one he'd never spoken of. Alvera touched it gently. "You hide everything. Not from you anymore." Their kiss came slowly, not rushed, not angry. It wasn't about tension this time. It was about truth, a kind of softness neither had been allowed to feel in years. After, they lay side by side in silence. He brushed a curl from her cheek. "You're not what I expected," he whispered. "I didn't come here to be someone's weakness," she whispered back. "But maybe I came to be your strength." He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, and for once, the war felt far away. The next morning, more impact Seoul. Alvera walked into her office, still glowing from the night before, until her executive assistant stepped into her path with a folder. "It's urgent," the assistant said softly, "from the international investors." Inside was a letter, cold, corporate, signed with 6 names that mattered more than emotion ever could. "In light of recent scandals and market instability, we request more impact publicly sever ties with Mr. Hyun-woo CEO, or prepare for investor withdrawal and liquidation of assets." Alvera stared at the final line. "Drop Hyun-woo, or lose your company forever." Alvera stood at the tall window of her office. Behind her, everything she'd built. In front of her, the man she'd fallen for, walking through the front doors of her building, unaware of what waited upstairs. Her reflection stared back at her, and for the first time in her life, she had no idea which part of her legacy she was willing to lose. Morning, more impact Seoul, conference room. Alvera stood at the head of the table, 6 chairs across from her, 6 investors who once helped build her company, faces she once trusted. "You have until Friday to make your decision," one said calmly. "If you walk into that courtroom and take his side, we pull funding, full withdrawal, immediate." She nodded slowly, letting the words sit in the silence. No tears, no panic, just gravity. because now she understood the weight of everything. Later, courtroom, Central Seoul. Cameras flashed outside. Reporters swarmed the entrance. Inside the courtroom, Chairman Seo sat at the defense table. Expression smug, tailored suit pristine. His lawyers surrounded him like armor. Hyunwoo sat behind the prosecution desk, shoulders squared but jaw tight. He didn't know Alvera was coming. He hadn't asked her to. When her heels echoed through the marble chamber, every head turned. And when she stepped onto the witness stand and raised her right hand to take the oath, a wave of whispers swept through the gallery. The judge looked surprised. So did the prosecution. So did Hyunwoo. She spoke clearly, calmly. Chairman Seo knowingly funneled company funds through shell companies and offshore accounts. I was given full access to the financial files under the joint venture. What I found is in this USB drive. She handed it to the court officer. The room fell into stunned silence. Even Chairman Seo's lawyers froze. To be clear, the judge said, "You are testifying in favor of Mr. Hyunwoo Seo, despite the personal and financial cost?" Alvera's eyes didn't waver. "I'm testifying for the truth." Outside the courthouse hours. Later, the verdict came quickly. Chairman Seo, guilty, arrested on sight, dragged out under flashing cameras and screams from the press. Hyunwoo stood on the courthouse steps, blinking in disbelief. Free, cleared, vindicated. And yet, his first instinct was not to speak to the media. It was to find her. Later, Seo Holdings' private boardroom. The board reconvened with new energy. Offers poured in to reinstate Hyunwoo as CEO. He stood at the head of the table, silent. Then finally, no. The board looked confused. One man cleared his throat. "Excuse me?" "I'm not returning," Hyunwoo said. "I never wanted the seat. I only sat in it to protect the empire from rotting beneath it." He turned to the youngest person at the table, his sister. She gasped, "Appa!" He smiled gently. "You're the future of this company. You've seen what power can do. Now show them what purpose looks like." The vote was unanimous. Hyunwoo Seo stepped down. For the first time, freely. Nightfall. Rooftop, overlooking Seoul. The city shimmered beneath them, lights dancing across windows like scattered stars. Alvera stood wrapped in a long black coat, curls brushing her cheek in the wind. Hyunwoo stepped beside her, slipping his hand into hers without a word. For a moment, they just stood there. No deals, no scripts, no shadows, just them, finally unburdened. He looked at her. "I used to think power was everything," he said quietly. "The boardroom, the empire, the legacy. But then," he turned to face her fully. "You broke my empire, Alvera." She opened her mouth, but he stopped her with a soft smile. "But you rebuilt me, and that's the only empire I want." Her heart caught in her throat. The tears didn't fall, but they shimmered in her eyes like the city lights. She leaned in, lips brushing his. A kiss that wasn't about ownership or games, just truth, just love, just them. And when they pulled apart, hands still laced, Alvera whispered, "Then let's build something that doesn't need saving." From the rooftop, Seoul pulsed with life, but in the stillness, two hands remained clasped, firm, steady, unwavering. Not a love born from power, but one powerful enough to survive everything. 1 year later, Seoul, springtime. It wasn't a palace, just a sunlit corner office on the 14th floor of a modest building in Sinsadong. No golden nameplate, no armed security, but the walls were lined with purpose. Photos from rebuilding projects, framed client letters, a snapshot of Hyunwoo smiling, arms crossed, standing in front of a community center he'd helped fund anonymously. Next to it, a photo of Alvera, laughing, mid-sentence, eyes closed. She always hated that picture. He never replaced it. Midday, rooftop garden, new foundation HQ. Alvera sank onto the wooden bench, legs crossed, a tablet in her lap and iced tea sweating beside her. Hyunwoo stepped out from the stairwell door, sleeves rolled, sunglasses half on. "You're late," she said without looking up. "I brought peace offerings," he said, holding out a small paper bag. She peeked inside. Her favorite pastry from her favorite bakery, the one across the river that he swore was too far for carbs. She smirked. "Who are you? And what have you done with the ICE CEO?" "I melted," he said dryly, sitting beside her. Clearly, they shared the pastry in silence, the scent of jasmine blooming around them from the rooftop planters she insisted on. Below them, Seoul buzzed, but here, there was peace. He watched her for a long moment. Then, softly, "Do you miss it?" She looked at him. "Miss what?" "The fight, the empire, the storm." Alvera thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No," she said, "because I'm not surviving anymore. I'm building, with you." Hyunwoo exhaled, leaning back on his hands. "I used to believe power would give me freedom," he said. "Turns out, love did." She smiled. It wasn't grand, but it was real. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black box. Alvera blinked. "You're not—" "It's not a ring," he said, opening it. Inside was a delicate gold key. She frowned. "What's this?" "To our new home," he said. "Just outside the city. Quiet. Big enough for whatever future we build." She took the key, voice barely above a whisper. "You sure?" He looked at her, eyes warm. "No masks. I gave up an empire for you. I'd do it again every day." She kissed him before he could say another word. Longer this time, not rushed, not to prove anything, just to say yes. As dusk fell over the Seoul skyline, the rooftop lights flickered on, catching in the soft petals of the flowers surrounding them. Below, the world moved fast, but up here, two lovers built something that didn't need to be loud to last. An empire of peace, an empire of us. The end. Thank you so much for watching. She broke his empire. I hope this story moved you, surprised you, and maybe even made you believe a little more in the kind of love that doesn't just change hearts, but changes lives. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves powerful storytelling. I'd love to know, what was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Until next time, stay inspired, stay bold, and I'll see you in the next story.